Because the U.S. government officially shut down at midnight after Congress and the White House failed to reach an agreement on how to extend federal funding. It's the first shutdown since 2018, which came during President Trump's first term, and that was the longest ever at 34 days. Hours before last night's deadline, both Republican and Democratic funding proposals were rejected by the Senate. This despite 3 Democrats voting in favor of that GOP bill. As of this moment, there is still no clear path to a resolution here. Republicans say there's nothing left to negotiate, and they expect Democrats to eventually crack under pressure.
I think there are a lot of them over there who know that their leadership is walking them off the cliff and really want to do something other than follow the leader. But they are under so much pressure from the political left in this country. I think they're stuck, and they don't have an identity right now. And this is just an example that they really don't know what they're doing. We're going to have another vote tomorrow, and they'll probably try and block it again. But I think people are going to start cracking because they're going to realize this is a losing hand.
There literally is nothing to negotiate. They're bringing in extraneous issues that don't have anything to do at all with keeping the government open. And we've said, you do your first job, keep the government open, and then we'll talk about the rest of it. There's nothing to negotiate. There's nothing I can give. He has to do the right thing because real people are going to be hurt.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer jabbed back and continued to call for more negotiation.
So we see now Republicans are plunging America into a shutdown, rejecting bipartisan talks, pushing a partisan bill, and risking America's health care, worst of all. A few moments ago, Republicans once again rejected Democrats' proposals to avoid a shutdown, fix health care premiums, and spare Americans the calamity of skyrocketing through the roof health care costs. Republicans blocked it again, once again. So now 2 times, Republicans have failed to get enough votes to avoid a shutdown. They've got to sit down and negotiate with Democrats to come to a bill that both parties can support.
That was Leader Schumer last night. He's going to set the tone for what the first day of this shutdown looks like a little bit later when he joins Morning Joe. You don't want to miss that interview. As for its implications, last night the White House directed federal agencies to begin implementing their shutdown contingency plans. In a memo, White House Budget Director Russ Vought told leaders of executive branch departments and agencies to, quote, execute their plans for an orderly shutdown. That directive triggered furloughs for hundreds of thousands of federal workers and the suspension of a range of government services. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that roughly 750,000 federal employees could be furloughed each day of the shutdown, with the total daily cost of their compensation at roughly $400 million. Many of them can't work. They get back pay when all of this is over, whenever that is. Some services are expected to continue, though, including Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits, military operations, law enforcement, immigration and customs enforcement, Customs and Border Patrol protection, and air traffic control. The Smithsonian Institute says its museums, research centers, and National Zoo will also remain open through at least Monday, using prior year funds to stay open. Unclear what happens after that. One official at the Department of Interior says it'll use a make things accessible when you can approach when it comes to national parks. Open air sites and parks are expected to remain open, but buildings that require staffing, such as visitor centers, will be closed. Meanwhile, the White House yesterday seemed to welcome the chaos created by this shutdown, believing that Democrats will take the blame for it and eventually cave to Republican demands. A White House official told NBC News it'll be hard for Democrats to defend why they're not agreeing to a clean funding bill to keep the government open. That just means that they're extending funding levels. There's nothing else in the bill. In the Oval Office, President Trump suggested that the shutdown could help his administration.
So the last thing we want to do is shut it down, but a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things, but they want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop. They don't learn. We won an election in a landslide. They just don't learn. So we have no choice. I have to do that for the country.
Want to bring in congressional reporter for Notice, Daniela Diaz. Daniela, it is very busy on our beat right now, but the mood on this feels really different. And you were picking up on this, and we were talking before we came on set about it almost feels like everyone accepted that we were going into a shutdown posture, and no one has seemingly answered the question of how do we get out of one now?
That's exactly right, Allie. It's interesting because even weeks leading up to this, it was, will they shut down? Won't they shut? Is this going to happen?
Deadline's on everyone's calendar.
The deadline's on everyone's calendar. We saw that Democrats were really digging in on these health care provisions. A couple of weeks ago, it wasn't clear whether they would make this a red line to cause a shutdown. Now they're saying this is what we're going to hold the line on. We want to see Medicaid restored, which was cut in that one big, beautiful bill over the summer. And also, we want to see the ACA subsidies that are set to expire at the end of the year extended. But Republicans are not blinking. You saw President Donald Trump, you just showed it in the Oval Office yesterday, and he was talking about how it didn't even seem like this was on his radar. He was talking about many other things other than the shutdown. This is not something that Republicans even seem concerned about. And yesterday, House Republicans weren't even on Capitol Hill. Speaker Mike Johnson's in town, but House is technically not even in session. So it really felt kind of like a very dull start to a shutdown because while there are a lot of angry Democrats, Republicans are not really reacting to it.
And we'll drill down even further, right? The reason that Republicans aren't in town is because initially there were some voting days that were scheduled. The speaker clawed those back, and it's a continued leverage point to make sure that the only bill that can be considered, at least over the course of the next week, is the one that the House passed. That's the clean version that Republicans are pushing towards. I do think that Thune is right when he talks about the pressure that some members of the left are feeling from the grassroots base, from advocacy groups who have continuously been showing them poll after poll that shows them the left wants them very badly to show fight, and that this issue of health care is the one that is the most salient point for them to drill down on. But have you heard Democrats who are uncomfortable with that? Because I know I have.
Yes, but I think the bigger issue here is, let's flash back to March. They passed a quote-unquote clean CR. Then we saw a handful of Senate Democrats vote for that without any concessions. And then we saw the huge blowback that happened to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and all of the members that voted for that bill. This is, in many ways, an extension of that, what happened in March, the bill that they put on the floor this time around. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is not eager to get back into that discussion of whether he should remain the leader because he didn't fight back on these issues. And look, healthcare's polling really well. They know that. So while there are some senators who are quietly, we saw 3 vote last night to vote to vote for this, but it wasn't enough to get it across the finish line. While we are seeing some senators quietly say, we don't think a shutdown is going to help at all, and in the end, we might not even get anything out of this. Broadly, Democrats are ready to kind of hold the line on this issue. And for at least a while, we might see that. I mean, I'm talking to my sources. I was on Capitol Hill yesterday. I'm going back in a few hours. And they're saying, I don't see this ending in at least a week. The House isn't even in. Johnson isn't even planning to bring them back. And that GOP CR that did not pass last night is something that the Republicans are going to keep pushing on. They're not going to make any concessions anytime soon.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of what we end up seeing today, we're going to see the Senate likely try and fail again on both the Democratic version of this continuing resolution, which includes their health care priorities, and the Republican version of it, which is, of course, this clean continuing resolution. Where do you think this goes next? And as someone who has long been told and has thought that these Affordable Care Act subsidies are the off-ramp at some point, do you see it that way? And if not that, then what is it? Where do we go next?
When I talked to Democrats, they brought up that line that Schumer gave at the sticks at the White House when he talked about the meeting after Trump. And he said, President Donald Trump didn't know about the ACA subsidies. I was the one to tell him, and he seemed receptive, if you remember that. So that's the line that they're holding on, thinking that maybe President Donald Trump will just call for some sort of deal in the end and want a solution to end the shutdown. But Republican leaders are really steadfast that they will not do anything. We just heard from Johnson saying, this is it. This is what we're offering, and they need to take it. Yeah. So who's going to blink first? That's what we're waiting for, and it doesn't seem like either side wants to anytime soon.
Yeah, and the idea that Democrats think that Trump might come in on this at the 11th hour, the same guy who put out that racist AI deepfake video of them after they met in what Jeffries called good faith at the White House, I think tells us a lot about where we are. I have similarly heard these more long-term predictions for how long this shutdown might last. And you're right, it's a game of chicken, but the people who are very much caught in the middle, and you and I have covered these before, are the American public who don't have to play politics and don't have to wonder, are we going to win? Are we going to do a good message so that the other side wins? People are going to get hurt regardless. Daniela Diaz, thank you. Get some rest. You and I are going to be very busy.